Hi there, welcome to Homer Watson House and Gallery. My name is Ralf Wall. I am your instructor and host for the video today. Today we're just going through a quick watercolor demo. I'm going to go through some do's and don'ts, how I approached this, what I did, what I use, that sort of thing. First thing, which was a big don't, was I had no plan. I just came in and winged it. Unprepared. I did this on purpose to, illustrate that sometimes you need a plan. At the very least, have a mental idea of what you want to do. I just winged it right from the start, relying on the fact that I am a landscape painter. I travel all around southern Ontario, near North Ontario as well, and sometimes around the world, paint the landscapes. So I have a good mental catalog of skies, forests, and lakes, so I relied on that. But I made a couple key errors, some on purpose, some just happened incidentally, and we're going to go through them as they come. Another thing to note, which was a big error on my part, but I let it go as I was doing it, was my paper was too big. So I have this taped down to a piece of corrugated plastic. Corrugated plastic is great to carry around with you because it's lightweight, it doesn't absorb water, so it's good for watercolor paper. But because the paper was the exact same size as the plastic, and actually slightly bigger, I had to tape it around the edges, and it didn't quite hold as well. So you will notice some buckling and some warping of the paper. Yeah, so that was one thing that really bugged me. The other thing, I'm painting flat on this one. Normally I paint standing up on an easel, so this was a little different for me, but because of camera angles, we're doing this in the studio, we need to work with the situation that we have. I will be putting a piece or my tape underneath the top just to elevate it a little bit to help gravity pull the paint down when I notice it starts to pool. So I've been an artist for quite a while, pretty much my whole life. So a lot of the stuff I learned here is just by my own experience, experimenting. There's the tape. There we go. So these are all life lessons I've learned on my own. I do take the occasional course with other artists that I admire, but most of the time it's just trial and error and experimentation. So that is one takeaway you should do for those who are just starting out. Just do it. Try it. Fail many times. You'll learn more from failing than you will from being told what not to do. And that's one of the things I teach in my courses. It's better to learn how to fix a mistake, or as Bob Ross calls them, a happy little accident, because sometimes you learn a lot from that, like accidentally putting too much of a certain color in, and then you realize, oh, instead of panicking, this is no longer a warm summer day, it's now going to be a fall painting, right? So I put a little bit too much orange, brown, and yellow in my trees, so I've altered it from the June day that it was to now we're into like October. So it's one of those things you learn, and just go with it. Don't panic. You can always try this again. This painting, it's sped up quite a bit. I think it only took me 30 or 40 minutes. So I didn't spend a lot of time on it. It's just a quick sketch. Here I am painting the water. It's just a simple sky, shoreline, and water scene. One thing I will note when I was painting this, that my sky and my water are very similar in tone, and generally speaking, either one or the other will be dark and the other light. So if you have a light sky, you might have a dark water, or you have a dark sky, like let's say in the evening or at night, your water will be light. Mostly from reflected light. So I mean, obviously at nighttime it's going to be, both dark, and maybe at high noon they'll both be light, depending on where the sun is. But it's always good to have one darker than the other, aesthetically speaking. It just brings more to the story. You'll notice my palette, it's quite messy, but it is very organized in the colors. So while I have the colors on the outside little pans, the bigger pans are dedicated to certain colors. So I have one for yellow, one for green, one for blue, and the other is like purples and reds, maybe little browns in there. So that way I get a bunch of different colors and textures. I don't like pure color. I like to mix things up. So like my blues are in this painting are ultramarine blue toned down with some burnt sienna and burnt umber. So I might use a little Payne's gray to get some really dark, and I'll use a little Prussian blue sometimes to get some darker blues. You will see two greens in there. One is a green apatite gem paint, and the other is a gold green. Very unique colors that I got from Daniel Smith, I believe. My brands are Daniel Smith and M. Graham. Those are the two favorite ones that I use a lot. I really like the quality, the color fastness, just generally how they work. If you have low-end watercolor, you might find that they dry a lot lighter. Watercolor does dry light, so always keep that in mind. You want to make sure that you have enough contrast in your paintings. So sometimes it requires doing layers and layers. So case in point, my shoreline and even my water, they'll both dry a lot lighter, and then I'll go back and keep adding more and more to it. Here I am, just going back in, finding little shapes in the water, just being random. When I paint water, I like to stand when I'm painting water, and I will sway side to side in rhythm with the waves. It sounds a little hokey, but I like to imagine I can feel the water on my legs, like as if I was standing up to my knees and I'm moving back and forth. If it's very calm water I'm painting, I will try to stay calm. If it's very windy and wavy, I paint a little bit more excited, right? You should always paint with the energy into your painting that you want to come out of the painting. So always keep that in mind. Here I am just tying in the shore. I left that white line there because I didn't want it to bleed into the water too soon. Now that I've got it in there, right now it looks like a little bit of mist on the shoreline. I'm just coming in, touching up little spots that dry a little too harsh. A little bit there got away from me, so now I gotta soften that up. Just add a little more drama to the sky. I tend to leave the sky alone generally. Don't really go back to it after it's done, unless the sky is the focus, right? Then I might go back and do a little bit more. But so here I am breaking up part of the water because it looked very symmetrical as the water was pooling. So you could see down the 2/3 lines, vertical lines. So I just wanted to break that up. You don't want to have patterns because it looks too man-made, looks too artificial. So just keep that in mind, especially when you're doing clouds and you have them the same size, same shape, and same distance apart from each other. Make one bigger, make them smaller, spread it out, clump them, just make it a little bit more organic. Nature does not really have patterns. That's more of a man-made thing. So if your trees are all in a row, they might look like a tree farm. So break it up. Just go, add a little bit here, a little bit there. Don't make it all uniform. Like in this one here, I will have it darker on one side than on another. Maybe add a little bit more of one color to one side than the other. Just make it a little bit more interesting, so it's not just a big pattern. I mean, unless that's what you want to do. Like if you're doing an abstract and you want pattern, and that's what your focus is, then go right ahead. There's no wrong for art, so long as you have an intent. That's my philosophy, at least. Art is intent, and the intent can be as simple as I'm playing with color, I'm playing with texture. I want to showcase the mood of this day, the energy of the wind, the coolness that I'm feeling. And it doesn't have to be real. Case in point, this was a hot June day, but this painting is coming across more as a cool October day. Here I am using the hairdryer only because we were filming this and I didn't have the luxury of time. I like to let my paint dry naturally, and you'll note that I'm testing the paper wetness with the back of my hand. The front of your hand or your fingertips will have natural recurring oils, so you don't want to get fingerprints. Some of your paints might not stick and they'll pool around it. If you feel with the back of your finger, if it feels cool, it's dry. If it feels warm, it's still wet. So that's a good rule to try and find. Try to follow. Here I am just going back in, finding the shapes in the water, the little waves that now that the paint has dried, what is it telling me? How are the waves performing? And there's adding a little depth underneath. As I go further into this painting, the brush gets smaller and smaller as I start to get more and more detailed. So sometimes I will paint with just a single brush. I've been using it a long time, so I'm quite adept at using a single brush or a palette knife and doing entire painting that way. But wanted to showcase using different brushes and why we do. So you start with the biggest and you just work your way smaller as you get to more details. So I will add a lot darker areas. Oh, there I made a little mistake. And we just go back in with a damp, clean brush, soak it up really quick, and there's nothing there. So you don't need to panic if you make a mistake. Even if it dried, you're pretty good with watercolor coming in with a wet brush and trying to scrub that out. And if not, just go with it, see what you can make out of it, right? Turn it into something awesome. Happy little accidents. A lot of times you will learn some really cool stuff. Accidentally putting too much color into my trees here is what led this from a summer to a fall painting. So I just went with it. The painting will tell you what the story is. And for me, that is the most important thing. What is the story that I am painting? Whether it's the story of the colors, the texture, the weather, or maybe there is a grander story, like what's behind the trees, what lurks beyond the untamed wild, that sort of thing. Is it welcoming? Is it foreboding? Do you want to go there? Are you being pushed away? Is nature saying keep back? That's the story you're trying to tell with your painting. Because whatever you put in, people will get out. They might not get the exact, nuances that you put in there, like the details of your story that you are imagining, but they'll probably get the general idea and the feeling and the emotion that you put in. And that's an important thing. So here I am just adding smaller details, darkening up a little bit. So like I said, it got a lot lighter. Adding a little bit more color, intensifying it a little bit. Just going in, finding little pieces, but also not making it uniform and rhythmic, right? So I don't have 3-4 trees in a row evenly spaced of the same size. These ones are a little evenly spaced, and I had more time, I probably would have gone and tweaked it a bit. I think I do come in with a green to break it up. As you go, just take a look. It's always good to, take a step back, look at something else, and then come back with fresh eyes, even if it's just a 5-10 minute break. And then, what stands out is good or, could be improved, right? So yeah, here I am just finding some shapes, just adding little accents to break it up a little bit. Just doing that breaks up that little bit of pattern that I had going there. Adding some darkness, some shadows, thicker bushes at the bottom where the ground is. Generally, I tend to have a lot of fun. This is probably one of my favorite parts of any painting, is putting in those little details, the little story. Here I am just with a clean, wet brush. I soak up the extra water, and then it acts like a sponge. So I can soften some edges, pick up a little extra paint, if it's blobbing a little bit too much, because like I said, the paper is warping, so it'll pool a little. You can soften that bottom, so you can still see the translucency of the water, but it's not like a hard edge. And you do want a variety of hard edges and soft edges. So that's what I'm kind of doing here, breaking it up a little bit, just so that it blends and flows together. And yeah, here I am, just adding a hint of like birch trees or lighter trunks, just by using a clean brush, a nice small one, taking up all the excess water, and it'll act like a sponge. Then going back in, darkening up the foreground of my water, because I want to create that atmospheric perspective. So things in the foreground will be much darker, things in the background much lighter, but because my forest is so dark, I need to create the illusion of depth with water. So less detail in the background of the water, more detail in the front, and the waves in the background would be much smaller as well. Everything's flattened back there. So there we go. There's my painting. Now I'm going to take off the tape for the reveal with the nice clean edges. But because this paper was too big, the tape wrapped around the corrugated plastic, so it was a little bit difficult to take it off. But it's just something to keep in mind. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. We will be doing more of these in the future with different artists as well. And let us know what you think, and if you want to see more of it. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.